Welcome to the 2021 Forbes Women Africa Leading Women Summit. Now, it has been a delight to witness the evolution of this summit, and we continue to have a lineup of women from all over the continent and the world who will share their thoughts and opinions. And this is quite pertinent because if we think about how leadership has changed through the global pandemic, how influences in terms of gender parity, and of course moving the needle forward in really trying to drive equality through various genders, it's become even more important for us to have these conversations in terms of what we can anticipate for today.
Anne Cairns is the Executive Vice Chair of MasterCard. In her role of Vice Chair, Anne represents MasterCard across the world, focusing on inclusion, diversity and innovation. She plays the important role of Senior Ambassador and Executive Leader with a global remit and sits as part of the company's Global Management Committee.
Women, although they control a huge amount of the world's wealth, and it will be half the world's wealth in a couple of years, they only have access to bank accounts. About 65% of them have access to bank accounts. When you actually come to Africa, that drops to 37%. So you can see the problem, because if you're not part of the financial system, it's very difficult to influence business and everything that goes on around it. If you look at the data from places like America, 70% of the jobs on the front line are done by women. There's many women in the healthcare sector, many women in the hospitality sector, and also women have a higher rate of part-time jobs compared to men because they're trying to juggle their families and their work. And what happens in this kind of pandemic is those are the industries and those are the sectors that get hit the worst. And really, that's why women are suffering so much more. Women only get, 23% of them get access to credit. And that's because they don't have the collateral to borrow from the banks. I think we have to come up with financial solutions that help women in their roles. And for example, MasterCard's been working with Unilever on a project called Jazaduka, where through Unilever's supply chain into the small shops, we're able to gather the data and show that the Dukas are really making quite a good business of it. And we present that data to the local banks and we get financing that way. I think we have to be very pragmatic about what we're doing for women.
As we know, whilst things might happen from a macroeconomic point of view, they do still filter down to having an impact on our profits and on our pockets, primarily when it comes to the rise of the low-touch economy, where financial and digital inclusion in a pandemic world has been something that's been highlighted given what we've experienced in the last few months. As we know, the financial and digital economy has undergone a permanent shift with a digital-first mantra, touchless commerce and improved customer experience. Now, with all of this advancing so quickly, what does it mean for women's digital and financial inclusion, especially in a world with COVID-19 that has exacerbated the gender and economic inequalities? This raises a very pertinent question in terms of how best we need to understand how we serve the needs of the unbanked and underbanked, and how this can unlock significant advantages for emerging economies, specifically at this time. What new products can be developed? Can they be pandemic-proof? And how do we ensure that despite the pandemic, women still remain at the forefront and continue to receive digital and financial support? Well, join me for this conversation as we get introduced to our panelists.
Ihyembe-Nwankwo is Country Manager and Area Business Head, West Africa MasterCard. She has held this role since December 2019. Based in Nigeria, Ihyembe is responsible for advancing the MasterCard brand presence in West Africa, deploying innovative payment solutions, and partnering with local governments and market regulators to build a world beyond cash. Ihyembe-Nwankwo is the head coverage at Rand Merchant Bank, Nigeria. The coverage team fulfills the role of being the central point of contact for all RMBN's clients, which includes developing new business opportunities and overseeing the client's day-to-day corporate and investment banking requirements. Yvonne Ike is the Managing Director, Sub-Saharan Africa at the Bank of America. Yvonne has more than 25 years' experience in the financial services sector. Yvonne is passionate about actively contributing to Africa's development. In 2019, she was recognized as one of the top 100 women CEOs in Africa. The moderator is Gugulethu Mfuphi, global moderator and conversationalist.
Welcome to all of you ladies, and thank you so much for joining us. Happy International Women's Day. But as we get into this very critical and pertinent topic, Ebehiji, I think I'd like to start off with you just to set the theme in terms of really getting to grasp the status quo and understanding and fully comprehending the impact that COVID-19 and this pandemic with the subsequent lockdowns has actually had on the disparities in women accessing financing adequately. Ebehiji?
Thank you so much. Happy International Women's Day to everyone. And thank you for having me here. First of all, say thank you to the organizers of the Forbes Women African Leading Women Summit. It's a great pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much. Yeah, the pandemic, the topic is everywhere, and the impact have been significant on women. But first, let's look at the woman itself today is a catalyst for growth. It's a catalyst for innovation and for social change. So when we address socioeconomic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the women and the girls, let's not forget the girls, is a key to economic recovery, because it's only by including everyone that we can effect a sustainable, inclusive growth where everyone can thrive. At MasterCard, we partner and then we partner with partners, and then we also innovate to include and connect women to the possibilities and the opportunities that will enable them make a living, following their passion, not just working, but following their passion, and also to contribute collectively to our prosperity. So MasterCard do believe in collaboration, and we also believe that collaboration will serve as an agent of change in contributing towards the digital financial inclusion. And so therefore, we continue to partner across the continent with fintechs, and then applying our technology expertise and wide network to promote digital transformation. Now back to the COVID-19 and the impact that it has had on women and also financial inclusion. First of all, just like what you said at the beginning, the progress in addressing the global gender disparity in financial inclusion remained slow. The gap is 7%. That was the data that we have in 2011. But when you bring it back home, here in the Middle East and Africa, economies such as Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, Angola, the gender gap in women financial inclusion is as large as 40%. Today, around 20 to 30% of the females have a bank account that can grant them even the freedom or the flexibility to manage their finances. What are we saying? 25% qualify for a credit card. So in this current context of a pandemic, disparity in women financial inclusion have significant implication, not only for women business owner, because sometimes there's a tendency to think about just the women business owner, but for women business leaders, women like us, professionals, technical workers, employees, those that are enrolled in tertiary institutions as well. So with most businesses and institutions around the world are now transitioning to the virtual world of working and living, women who do not have bank accounts or credit cards are finding themselves in a predicament. Today, we hear that the governments are giving out access to cash, but these cash or relief payments are provided through bank accounts. Mm-hmm. So where will the money go to? So even when we look at other women business owners, they are looking for loans to pay their worker salaries, to boost their rental payments. The challenges of even the lower credit scores due to low salary or even the credit standing of women disqualify them automatically altogether from obtaining loans. So, but the good news is that the digital financial inclusion was already a development focus area for everyone before the pandemic hit. Yeah, and now it's imperative for most COVID-19 recovery. Yes, there are challenges, like I have just stated, to accelerating digital finance, but also increasingly there is understanding and how to overcome some of these obstacles and then also reduce risk. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that feedback, Ebeheji. And I'm hearing the stats that you've quoted, 40% in terms of women in the unbanked market
Yes.
certainly is a number that is quite frightening and one that does need to be addressed. Yvonne, I'd like to come to you to get your thoughts and perspective on this particular topic, especially in terms of understanding the legacy issues and the weaknesses that have been highlighted by the pandemic as to how these hindrances might continue to be with us if we don't necessarily address female financial inclusion adequately. What have your observations been regarding the impact of the pandemic on the continent and failure to address these adequately going forward? Yvonne, I think we're going to potentially use the 2020 quote that many of us have gotten used to, that your mic is on mute.
It's mute.
So I've unmuted my mic. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a great pleasure to be here on this very auspicious day. At Bank of America, we're very, very focused on supporting women entrepreneurs across the world. And some of the initiatives that we support in Africa is the Acumen program, which is for male and female entrepreneurs. But we're working with Acumen to support the 3,000 jobs in the next 2 to 3 years. We also support the Prince's Trust Inclusive Business Growth Initiative. We have the Global Ambassadors Program, which has a big Africa component to it. And also the Bank of America has an Institute of Women Entrepreneurship, which is it's contributed to the University of Cornell Institute of Women Entrepreneurship, but we've just contributed another 30,000 seats. A lot of those facilities are online. And so we're passionate about advancing the cause of women. Just to answer your question, which I think is very important, I think the first thing I want to do is put some context around this. So even before the pandemic, we've seen that SMEs in Africa contribute at least 50% across Africa to the GDP and more than 70% to employment. And women run businesses in there are about 60%. Now, those businesses tend to be at the lower end of the value chain and the types of businesses that did suffer more during the pandemic. And one of the things, and then we then say, okay, over the last 10 years, what has happened? What we have seen, though, is that digital financial services has been on the up and rise in Africa. And we've gone from 23 to 43% in terms of active mobile bank accounts. So that progression is there. But then if we look at the data, the facts that lie beneath that, women have less access to those mobile accounts. And also, they have less financial solutions that are relevant for them. And so we see a world where it's imperative that actually to address financial inclusion, there must be we must see more digital transformation to help with that. And I look at the commercial banks today as a vehicle for supporting financial inclusion, particularly of women. And I see, frankly, a less relevant role to play in terms of the type of financing structures they have, the type of ancillary requirements they have, like collateral and all those sort of things, and contrast that with an emerging economy where we have digital banking platforms now that are more targeted to those lower income companies and SMEs, really, a lot of whom are women, and they're very focused on financial inclusion products for them to bring them into the economy. And so I see that as one of the things that we must look forward to and support as we go forward on this journey.
Thank you so much for that, Yvonne. I'm hearing the digital connection, and that's certainly one that we'll delve into in just a moment, specifically given even our interaction on this platform here today, right? Ordinarily, we'd all be gathered in one particular conference hall, shaking hands and engaging. But given the world that we live in, it's quite evident that digital is the future. And the African continent has been able to ride that wave in terms of digital tools, as you've mentioned, to increase access to financial services offerings. I'm intrigued to actually hear the feedback as well that we'll hear from Ngove to get more insight in terms of the partnership of the bank and the view of digital technology and finance interlinking is certainly a trend that we've witnessed over the last few years. And Ngove, perhaps if you could join us in this conversation to elaborate on your observations as to how leveraging on digital opportunities can be an opportunity for us to exploit to enhance the access that women have to financial services products.
Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you very much for having me. So I think, the first one needs to sort of set the context around where we are and why digital is the way to go. So in a country, for example, like Nigeria, where I am, and I use that to extrapolate for most of sub-Saharan Africa, you find that women are disproportionately excluded. One, because they're generally earning less. So when you try to do a comparison and you're trying to offer credit, in many cases, women just don't quite qualify. You also find that a lot of the roles that women are involved in, as I think it was Yvonne that I alluded to earlier, is really at the micro level. And so what then happens is they're not a natural focus for financial institutions. And that's where the conversation around digital inclusion has been held and has been pushed for many years. Sadly, COVID hit. And what we found with COVID as well is that women were disproportionately affected because women shared the higher burden of care. And so women are usually having to choose between the family and home, and with many children either completely out of school or working from home, you find that women do need to sort of have to make a choice. So what we found is an even bigger imperative for banks and financial institutions to sit back and say, how do we intervene? And in what way can we leapfrog some of the challenges? And some of the things that I'm certainly seeing is a focusing on the fintechs and understanding from the fintechs that it's not only smartphone-enabled devices that one can use to access technology. So I'm finding that fintechs are in a way scaling down the solutions that they're providing and finding ways to work with traditional organizations. So one thing I find in many, many countries is there's always been sort of a cooperative that takes note of what women do, helps to save money, helps to lend money. And so we're finding that fintechs are, scaling down to understand how that works and really finding ways to provide access to banking, first of all, through working with those cooperatives, educating women, providing devices where it needs to be, and providing cheaper source of funding to allow women to then, come into the sector. The other thing that that we're seeing certainly is that banks are realizing that it makes good business to lend to a woman. So we also see that there's been issues on the supply side of financing for women, where institutions have historically demanded for collateral, where property rights in Africa, in many countries in Africa, doesn't actually allow women to own land or own properties. So we're finding that banks are beginning to say, look, if we can discount some of the traditional requirements that we have, do we then allow ourselves to bank a sector where historically women pay back their loans? They're actually excellent credit, and that they run good business. And so there's a lot of work being done, and the banking sector and the financial sector is coming along with the help of many central banks as well.
I do understand that we are fairly limited for time, so perhaps Ebiheji, you'll close this off for us. And I think we've managed to understand the lay of the landscape. We've completely gotten to understand the role and the impact on the grassroots level as to what is required and how it is that large institutions, governments, and additional stakeholders, including entrepreneurs, can actually drive change. But I'm aware, Ebiheji, that MasterCard has also tried to upskill the future generation. So whilst you and I and people like yourself in your respective roles are actually looking to change policies, to change how it is that corporates operate, we also need to ensure that we invest in a future generation that is digitally upskilled and that is financially educated and financially literate. Give us some insight from a MasterCard point of view as to what some of the initiatives are that you've driven in terms of investing in the skills development perspective to ensure that a future generation of females will be digitally and financially included.
Thank you so much. First of all, last year we made a global financial inclusion commitment to bring 1 billion people into the digital economy by 2025. I like to let you know that 50 million of these are small businesses, and with direct focus on 25 million women entrepreneurs, just to state that as a beginning. But you said something really critical that I'd like to sort of quickly share what we have done in the past couple in addressing some of the skills gap that we have seen, even in financial in financial inclusion. First of all, MasterCard, we partner with the Junior Achievement Nigeria to help bridge that digital and financial literacy gap among school students and young adults in Nigeria. We have now the JAN is a series of programs that we have developed to equip participating students with essential skill to prepare them for the future. Successes as digital entrepreneurs based on what we have said. Now, JAN is a part of the Junior Achievement Worldwide. That's the world's oldest and largest nonprofit economic organization. And so we have been able to partner with them to do this skill. Now, the very interesting one that I'd like to talk about is the Girls for Tech program. I'm very excited about it. Having been a mother of 3 girls, I can imagine what the younger generation are getting from this skill set initiative that we have. Now we know that to bridge the tech skills shortage through the Girls for Tech, it's called the Girls for Tech. That's our program that we have been able to provide digital skills to girls aged between 8 and 12 years old as part of our inquiry-based STEM. You know what STEM is? The science, technology, engineering, and math activity. Now the Girls for Tech inspire young girls to build their skills that they need in STEM to become problem solver, because that's so important for us as women and even as young girls, and then as the leaders of tomorrow. It also aims to ensure that women have a voice in the development of products. You know, when Yvonne was talking about products earlier, and then also Ngova, the question is that where is the impact of a woman in developing that product? So through these skills, we're able to train young girls that are able to have a voice when it comes to developing products for the future. The program incorporates a very deep expertise in payment technology and innovation as well, and then include topics such as algorithm, digital convergence, cryptology. You know, we've talked about cryptocurrency all over. These are, you know, this is a great initiative which we are having with through the Girls for Tech. MasterCard has reached more than 1 million girls in 32 countries via 14 languages since we started this Girls for Tech. We launched globally in 2014. So I'm very excited. Last year, we have committed to reaching 5 million girls globally by 2025. I'm looking forward to us achieving that. And as a part of this program that we are having International Women's Day, we actually hosted 160 girls between the ages of 8 and 12 to our Girls for Tech webinar with our Junior Achievers Nigeria. I look forward to receiving some of the young girls there. The webinar will be rolled over on the 11th, on the 18th, as well as the 25th of March. Sure. Thank you.
You run like a girl is what my coach said to me at my first ever rugby training session. At my first rugby match, my opponent ran at me aggressively, meaning business. And something clicked in that same role. I threw myself in the tackle minutes before the rugby would end, and that tackle saved us the match. I do not want to be me. I'm a girly girl who enjoys wearing makeup and beautiful clothes, a woman who plays rugby. I was born in a small village, Utolo, in the Eastern Cape, born into 3 generations of domestic. And from early on, I knew I wanted to break the circle. I wanted to win. When I was born, my mother did not name me. It was my grandmother who named me Pure, meaning gift, with hopes and dreams that I'd live up to my name. Even till today, when she's filled with pride, when I am winning, she always goes back to that day when she named me. In primary school, I was not exposed to sport. It was in high school that I joined netball, excelled in athletics, and I got introduced to touch rugby. That's when I met Francois Pretorius, known as Boki. Boki mentored me, coached me, supported me. He actually told me I could be the next Brian Habana, even though I didn't know who he was in, because I didn't have access to the channels that rugby was aired in. During university, I was playing in a senior national tournament. And that's when the sevens coach scouted me, searching for players that he could transform from touch rugby into full contact rugby. And after the camp, he suggested that I get exposed to more rugby. That's when I joined the Golden Lions, made the university team, and I got selected for SA Student Sevens team, and I joined Pirates. During one of our Pirates video sessions, walked in Brian Havana and Dan Carter. I finally got the chance to meet the guy. Brian and Dan coached us and spoke to us as part of the MasterCard Priceless Surprise. Brian told us that if you make a mistake, do not dwell on it. Focus on the next job. And the next job has been our team's motto and the secret to our success. My rugby journey hasn't been easy. Having to make the tough decision of quitting my full-time job to pursue my dream of becoming a Springbok, and facing stereotypes like rugby is not for women. We need to be the change we want to see. We need to create opportunities for women to coach, to play, or to be part of a supporting team. I love that when I run on the field with my teammates, we're as diverse as any group of women you'll ever find. Rugby creates a sense of belonging, a sense of sisterhood. Some of my proudest moments as a woman has been on the field, having been part of the underdogs against all odds, feeling the joys of scoring tries or playing in a final with broken ribs, having to push myself mentally and physically. I have represented my country against Spain, Scotland. I have cried when I sang my country's national anthem, wearing my Springbok jersey next to my team. When I play rugby, I feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. Outside of playing for the Springbok, my proudest and greatest achievement is scoring the most points in a single provincial rugby match in both men and women. And that I have just been signed by MasterCard as their ambassador. I am Pure Buslenyana. I am a Springbok and a proud African woman.